Commander Elias Kane had never been far from human space before, but standing on the observation deck of the Arcturus orbital station, he felt a thrill that was new. The station was enormous, a gleaming jewel suspended against the blackness of the nebula. Stars shimmered through the reinforced glass like distant fireflies, and far below, the swirling colors of the gas giant Arcturus Prime reflected off the station's surface. Every human who had come to the station had left in awe, and Elias felt the same, though he hid it well behind a mask of military discipline. He had been sent as part of the delegation from the United Earth Alliance, tasked with negotiating trade agreements and ensuring peaceful relations with the Xylarian Empire. It was delicate work. The Xylarians were known for their advanced technology, but also for their secrecy and pride. They had never been hostile toward humans, yet humans were outsiders, often underestimated in the vast political landscape of the galaxy. Elias was determined to show them that humanity deserved to be taken seriously. The reception hall was like nothing Elias had seen before. High ceilings of luminescent crystal bathed the room in soft, ever-changing light. Guests from dozens of species mingled in a careful dance of etiquette. Elias adjusted the cuff of his formal uniform and took a measured breath. He had met dignitaries before, but none so alien and so formal as the Xylarians. Their features were beautiful, yet otherworldly, with elongated limbs, translucent skin with hints of color that shifted with emotion, and eyes that reflected intelligence far beyond human comprehension. The ceremony was filled with polite introductions, formal speeches, and the occasional courteous gesture of goodwill, like the exchange of rare minerals and artifacts. Elias listened carefully, analyzing every word, every gesture. Diplomacy was not just about speech. It was about reading the silent language between the lines. He felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. One wrong word, one careless glance, and negotiations could collapse. Then she appeared. Princess Lyra stepped into the hall with the elegance of a creature perfectly aware of the effect she had. Her presence was different from the others, subtle but impossible to ignore. She did not speak loudly or demand attention, yet the room seemed to quiet as if it recognized her. Elias found himself staring, though he chided himself immediately. He had a duty to remain professional. She approached the human delegation slowly, eyes scanning, as if seeing not just with her eyes, but with her mind. When she reached Elias, she paused, her gaze fixing on him in a way that made the air feel charged. Elias swallowed hard. There was a strange warmth behind her translucent skin, a depth of intelligence and emotion he had not expected. He bowed politely, feeling the old soldier's caution rising in him. "Commander Elias Kane," she said softly, her voice melodic, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. "It is an honor to meet you." Elias straightened. "Princess Lyra, the honor is mine. Your people have built something remarkable here." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing in curiosity, though her expression remained serene. "Remarkable, yes. But I hear that humans are remarkable in other ways, too. Brave, adaptable, curious." She smiled faintly. "I wonder, how much of this is true?" Elias could not answer immediately. Her gaze felt as though it penetrated deeper than words could reach. He had faced alien species before, but never one that seemed so genuinely interested in him as a person. The conversation was light, polite, and measured, yet beneath it, something unspoken passed between them, a current of awareness, of recognition. Then it happened. In a moment that seemed to stretch in slow motion, Lyra leaned slightly closer, her breath warm against his ear, and whispered, "Elias Kane." Elias froze. The name had left her lips like a secret carried across the void. Shock and curiosity collided within him. How could she know his name? He had met her for less than 5 minutes, yet she spoke it as though she had known him forever. He turned slightly, keeping his voice calm but firm. How do you know my name?" Lyriath's lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she stepped back gracefully, her presence still commanding attention. "I know many things," she said, her voice like a song, neither boastful nor threatening. "Some truths take longer to understand than others. Perhaps, Commander, you will see for yourself." Elias's mind raced. The Xylarians were intelligent and secretive, but nothing in the reports had suggested that any of them could know a human's name before meeting them. It was not a trick of technology he could see, and yet the certainty in her voice left no doubt that she knew. He made a mental note to investigate this further, but for now he returned the bow of politeness, masking the shock that still lingered beneath his calm exterior. The rest of the evening continued with formal discussions, presentations of Xylarian technology, and careful exchanges of pleasantries. Elias observed Lyriath from a distance at times, noting the subtle way she studied the humans. She did not merely glance at them. She watched them as though absorbing every detail, every reaction. There was a patience in her gaze, a focus that made Elias's military instincts tingle with both respect and caution. When the reception ended, the human delegation retired to their quarters aboard the station. Elias found himself unable to shake the memory of her whisper. The name, spoken so softly yet with such clarity, echoed in his mind. He knew that this encounter was more than ceremonial. There was intelligence behind it, curiosity, and perhaps even strategy. He paced the length of the observation deck, staring out at the swirling colors of Arcturus Prime. The nebula beyond was beautiful and dangerous, filled with radiation storms and cosmic winds that could tear a ship apart if one strayed too close. Yet somehow, the uncertainty of the nebula mirrored the uncertainty of his thoughts. Why had she whispered his name? Was it a test, a warning, or simply an observation? Humans prided themselves on bravery and adaptability, yet here was a species far older and more advanced, and Elias felt a strange thrill at the thought of matching wits with them. Perhaps humanity's reputation was well earned, he thought, if even the royal princess found him intriguing. Sleep was restless. Elias dreamed of vast halls filled with crystalline structures, of voices whispering secrets across time and space, and of eyes, alien, intelligent eyes, watching him with quiet curiosity. He woke before dawn, mind buzzing with possibilities. The first meeting had been only a beginning. The next day, the human delegation was escorted to the cultural archives of the Xylarian Empire. The archives were a marvel of engineering and intelligence, filled with holographic records, living databases, and artifacts that seemed to hum with energy. Elias moved carefully through the halls, taking in every detail. The Xylarians clearly valued knowledge as much as humans valued courage. Lyriath appeared again, this time guiding the humans through the galleries. She explained the significance of each artifact with a voice that was calm, precise, and engaging. Yet, when she spoke to Elias directly, her tone carried the same undercurrent of curiosity and awareness from the previous evening. "You see, Commander," she said, gesturing toward a holographic display of early Xylarian history, "every civilization has its strengths. Humans, you have courage. You adapt. You endure. These qualities are not so easily measured, but they are remarkable nonetheless." Elias nodded, finding himself intrigued by her perspective. "I would like to understand more about your people, Princess. Your history, your science, your philosophy. It is unlike anything humans have seen before." Lyriath smiled faintly. "Then perhaps we will teach each other, Commander. Knowledge is a bridge. An understanding is a path that leads far." Her eyes flicked to his briefly, and he felt the quiet weight of her attention once more. Hours passed, and the human delegation absorbed as much as they could. Elias noticed subtle patterns in the way Lyra moved, the way she observed, the way she spoke. Everything about her suggested patience, intelligence, and an awareness that humans often overlooked. It was clear she was not merely a princess performing a ceremonial duty. She was learning, analyzing, and remembering. By the end of the day, Elias felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The Xylarian Empire was beautiful, dangerous, and fascinating. But more than that, he felt a personal challenge, a curiosity sparked by the whisper of his name. The princess knew him before he had the chance to know her, and that simple fact stirred something deep within him. As night fell on the orbital station, Elias returned to his quarters once again. He looked out at the nebula, thinking about the journey ahead. There would be diplomacy, negotiation, and perhaps conflict. But more than anything, there would be questions that required answers. How did Lyra know his name? Why did she take such an interest in him? And what did it mean for the future of humans and Xylarians alike? Elias did not know, but he felt certain of one thing. Humanity had survived and thrived in the vast galaxy, not through fear, but through curiosity, courage, and connection. And whatever secrets the princess held, he would face them as he always had, with intelligence, determination, and a steady heart. The whisper of a name had set events into motion that neither human nor Xylarian could yet predict. And as Elias drifted into a fitful sleep, he knew that this was only the beginning of an encounter that could change the course of history across the stars. The next morning, Commander Elias Kane woke to the soft hum of the orbital station. Sunlight from Arcturus Prime's swirling clouds poured through the observation windows, casting shifting patterns across his quarters. His mind, however, was far from the gentle morning. The whisper of his name lingered in his thoughts. He could not stop thinking about it, how the princess, Lyra, had known him before they even properly met. He dressed quickly, careful to maintain his usual composure. Today he would accompany the Xylarian delegation to the archives, a vast library of knowledge said to hold the histories, discoveries, and secrets of the Xylarian Empire spanning thousands of years. For humans, it was an opportunity to learn and perhaps to understand why Lyra seemed to know him so well. As he entered the grand hall of the archives, the air was cooler than the rest of the station, scented faintly with a crisp metallic note that reminded Elias of new technology. Towering columns held shelves filled with holographic scrolls, artifacts, and glowing tablets. The hall was quiet, yet it felt alive, humming with the knowledge contained within. Princess Lyra awaited the delegation, standing at the far end of the hall. She looked as composed as ever, her eyes glinting with curiosity and intelligence. Elias approached, bowing slightly. "Commander," she said, her voice calm, measured. "I hope your rest was sufficient. Today we explore not only history, but insight." Elias nodded. "I am eager to learn, Princess. Your archives are unlike anything we have ever seen." She smiled faintly. "Then let us begin." As they walked through the corridors, Lyra pointed out artifacts from Xylarian history, tools, writings, and technological devices that had been created over millennia. Elias listened intently, asking questions and taking mental notes. The Xylarian Empire had mastered space travel, energy manipulation, and medical sciences far beyond humanity's current capabilities. Yet Elias noticed something peculiar. Some of the technology bore a strange resemblance to human designs, though modified and evolved. Lyra seemed to notice his gaze lingering on certain devices. "You are observant, Commander," she said. "Perhaps too observant." Elias smiled faintly, though he could feel a slight tension rise in his chest. Curiosity is what has allowed humans to survive this far, Princess. We observe, we adapt, and we learn. It is our strength. Lyriath's eyes softened slightly, as if considering his words. Indeed, observation and understanding are key. But sometimes knowledge alone is not enough. One must understand the heart as well as the mind. Elias glanced at her, curious. The heart? She nodded, gesturing to a holographic display showing images of Xylarian diplomats from centuries past. History records what leaders do, but it does not always show why. The reasons, the motivations, the courage. It is these that define a civilization. As they moved deeper into the archives, Lyriath paused at a particular section filled with data crystals. She gestured for Elias to step closer. The crystals glowed softly, displaying records of early human-Xylarian contact. To Elias's surprise, some of the recordings included human events he had participated in decades ago. Exploration missions, first contact scenarios, diplomatic meetings. He realized that the Xylarians had access to a massive database of human history, much of which humanity had never shared publicly. "Princess," Elias said carefully, "these records... How did you obtain this information? Some of these events are not even in public archives." Lyriath's expression remained calm, but a glint of amusement crossed her eyes. "Humans leave traces, Commander. Records, messages, transmissions, even thoughts can echo across time if one knows how to listen. I have studied your species carefully. You are predictable in some ways, but full of surprises in others." Elias's heart quickened. The whisper of his name, the recognition of his actions, the awareness she displayed, it all made sense now. Lyriath had not simply guessed, she had studied. But how much had she learned, and why did she focus on him in particular? The princess led the delegation into a chamber filled with holographic projections of human culture, cities, machines, and even art from Earth and other colonies. Elias walked through the projections, observing the incredible detail. He realized that Lyriath had not only studied humans historically, but had taken the time to understand their culture, their motivations, their fears, and their ambitions. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice low. "Of all humans, why would you know me?" Lyriath paused. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, her expression carried a hint of emotion that transcended diplomacy. "Because, Commander, your actions leave impressions. Humans who act with courage and integrity leave echoes in the mind of one who watches closely. You are not the only one I have observed, but you have qualities that stand out." Elias felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. Recognition was flattering, but it was also unnerving. He had never encountered an individual from another species who could perceive him so clearly without meeting him. He wondered what it meant for the future of diplomacy, for the fragile trust between humans and Xylarians. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. A projection on the wall flickered, displaying a security breach in a restricted sector of the archives. Humans were asked to step back, and Xylarian security units moved swiftly through the hall. Elias instinctively followed Lyriath's movements, observing how she remained composed despite the tension. "Stay close," she whispered, her eyes scanning the projections. "This is a test, perhaps, or a mistake. Either way, we must act carefully." Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. He had faced danger before, in combat and in hostile environments, but navigating a political crisis in an alien empire added a new layer of complexity. He followed Lyriath as she guided the delegation to a secure observation area. From there, he watched the Xylarian security forces move with precision, their movements coordinated, almost elegant in execution. Once the breach was resolved, Lyriath turned to him. "You see, Commander, even in calm situations there are always challenges. One must be observant, adaptable, and ready to respond. Humans, you do this naturally, but your ways are sometimes abrupt. Elias chuckled softly. I will take that as a compliment. She inclined her head. It is meant as one. Adaptability is what has allowed your species to survive against impossible odds. That is why I study you. You are unpredictable, yet strong. You do not always follow logic, but your choices often carry the weight of courage. The rest of the day passed with more exploration and observation. Elias saw Lyriath's careful attention to detail, her interest in humans, and her quiet intelligence. He began to realize that she was not merely curious. She was learning. Every gesture, every word, every expression was being absorbed. She was building a mental map of humanity and of him personally, noting strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, Elias and Lyriath found themselves alone in a small observation chamber overlooking Arcturus Prime. The planet Storm swirled below them, and the nebula beyond glimmered with distant stars. Princess, Elias said cautiously, I must ask, why take such an interest in me personally? What do you hope to learn? Lyriath regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke softly. Because, Commander, knowing you helps me understand your species. Humans are complex. You are not like others. You fight, you endure, you question, and you act with a kind of courage that cannot be taught. Observing you tells me more than any record ever could. Elias felt a shiver of both fear and fascination. To be understood so deeply by an alien intelligence was both humbling and unsettling. He realized that Lyriath's abilities went beyond mere observation. She had an uncanny perception of character, the ability to see not only actions, but the intentions behind them. The quiet moment was broken when the rest of the delegation returned. The day ended with formal discussions and careful exchanges of courtesy, but Elias could not stop thinking about what he had learned. Lyriath had not only studied humans, she had chosen him as an example, perhaps because she sensed qualities that were rare even among humans. That night, as he wrote in his log, Elias reflected on the day's revelations. He wrote of Lyriath's calm intelligence, her careful observations, and her subtle ways of guiding the human delegation. Most importantly, he wrote of the whisper of his name and the realization that someone, somewhere in the galaxy, had seen him before he had even been aware of her. Sleep came fitfully. He dreamed of corridors filled with glowing crystals, of eyes watching him with quiet interest, and of a voice whispering his name across the stars. It was unsettling, yet thrilling. He understood now that the galaxy was larger and more intricate than he had imagined, and that humans, with their courage and adaptability, were both small and yet immensely significant. The next morning, Elias rose determined. The day would bring more exploration, more questions, and perhaps more answers. But one thing was certain. His encounter with Lyriath had changed him. He would face the challenges ahead with careful observation, courage, and an understanding that human strength lay not just in technology or numbers, but in the mind and heart. And somewhere across the station, Princess Lyriath watched, learning, observing, and taking note of every human action, every choice, and every flicker of emotion. Elias did not yet understand the full extent of her abilities, but he would soon. For now, the whisper of his name remained a mystery, but it was a mystery he intended to explore. The following days on the Arcturus orbital station were tense, yet strangely exhilarating for Commander Elias Kane. After the initial encounter with Princess Lyriath and the insights gained in the archives, he had begun to see the Xylarian Empire not merely as an advanced civilization, but as a society of thinkers, strategists, and diplomats whose intelligence surpassed anything humans had yet faced. Yet beneath the grandeur and calm, Elias sensed subtle unease. The whispers in the corridors, the hurried glances between Xylarian officials, and the quiet, almost imperceptible changes in behavior hinted that not everyone on the station welcomed humans. Elias knew that in any great civilization, factions existed. Some were open to cooperation, some were indifferent, and some were outright hostile. It was during a formal luncheon in the Emperor's wing that the first clear sign of trouble emerged. The hall shimmered with holographic decorations representing the Xylarian Empire's victories and history. Human delegates sat carefully among Xylarians of various ranks. As the meal began, Elias noticed a group of Xylarians whispering among themselves, their eyes flicking toward the humans. One of them, a tall figure in silver robes, looked particularly tense. Princess Lyra arrived shortly afterward, moving through the room with grace and ease. She acknowledged the humans with a subtle nod and took her place near the head of the table. Elias could not help but notice that despite her serene demeanor, her eyes were sharp, scanning the room as though assessing every movement and gesture. After the first course, Lyra leaned toward Elias slightly, speaking softly enough that only he could hear. "Commander, pay attention. There are currents beneath the surface of this empire. Not all who appear loyal are so. Some fear change. Some fear humans. You must watch carefully." Elias's hand tightened around his glass. "Do you believe there is danger?" She shrugged ever so slightly, her expression composed. "I cannot be certain, but prudence is never wasted. Observe, understand, act." Elias nodded, appreciating her caution. Humans had learned long ago that diplomacy was often intertwined with hidden agendas, and the lesson seemed universal across species. Later, while walking through the station's corridors, Lyra guided him to a quieter observation lounge. The view outside was breathtaking, with Arcturus Prime spinning slowly, its storms glowing in shades of violet and orange. "Commander," she said, "the breach in the archives earlier was not an accident. Someone is testing the limits of human presence here, though I cannot yet identify the source." Elias frowned. "A test or an attack?" "Perhaps both," Lyra said. Her eyes met his, intense and unwavering. "I have sensed subtle manipulations in security protocols, slight deviations from expected patterns. These are small, but they tell me something important. Someone does not want humans here. Perhaps someone wishes to undermine the alliance before it begins." Elias's mind raced. He had faced threats before: pirates, hostile alien factions, environmental disasters. But this was different. This was covert, hidden, and the enemy was among the people who should have been allies. He realized that his adaptability and training would be tested in a new way, requiring not brute strength, but intelligence, observation, and trust. Over the next several hours, Elias and Lyra conducted a discreet investigation. Using subtle questions, careful observation, and knowledge gained from previous human missions, they identified anomalies in communications and security routines. At first, the deviations seemed minor, almost insignificant. But patterns began to emerge. Certain areas of the station were accessed unusually often, some transmissions were rerouted, and a few Xylarians acted in ways that contradicted their assigned duties. "Commander," Lyra said quietly, "these are the first signs of a coordinated effort. Someone wishes to destabilize relations, perhaps even capture human technology or sabotage the mission. I suspect it is a faction within the Empire itself." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then we need a plan. We cannot allow this to succeed." Lyra nodded. "Agreed. But we must act carefully. Confrontation is dangerous. Subtlety is required. Humans can often improvise. Perhaps this is where your species shines." They began formulating a plan. Elias would use his human intuition, experience with unpredictable situations, and knowledge of human tactics to anticipate potential moves. Lyra would provide insight into the Empire's inner workings, her understanding of Xylarian behavior, and her remarkable memory of prior events. Together, they formed a quiet but powerful team, combining the strengths of two very different species. Their opportunity to act arrived sooner than expected. During a routine inspection of a lower maintenance deck, Elias noticed subtle signs that something was amiss: panels slightly ajar, tools misplaced, and faint traces of energy interference. He signaled Lyra, who arrived quietly behind him. "Commander, this is where I suspected tampering," she said, her eyes scanning the area rapidly. "Someone attempted to access restricted systems. We must find the perpetrator before they strike again." Elias nodded, his training kicking in. He examined the deck, following the faint traces of energy and subtle mechanical disruptions. Finally, near a maintenance hatch, he discovered a hidden device, small, metallic, and humming faintly, with an unknown energy source. It appeared to be a surveillance and control device, capable of intercepting communications and manipulating systems. "This is serious," Elias said. "Whoever placed this knows our routines. We need to act fast." Lyra examined the device, her fingers brushing its surface. "It is sophisticated but not undetectable. We can trace its signals back to its origin, but we must move carefully. Any misstep could alert the saboteur." Working together, they traced the device's signals through the station's systems. The path led to a section of the station housing the technology vaults, a place heavily guarded and restricted. Elias felt a familiar surge of tension and anticipation. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This required subtlety, careful observation, and split-second decision-making. As they approached the vaults, they observed a figure attempting to access the systems remotely. Elias recognized the precision in the movements. The figure was skilled, deliberate, and clearly intending to bypass security. Lyra's voice was calm but urgent. "Commander, the individual is attempting to manipulate the central control systems. If successful, they could access sensitive technology or even disable security measures throughout the station." Elias acted quickly, using his knowledge of human systems and improvisational skills. He diverted the energy flows manually, creating a temporary disruption that forced the saboteur to pause. Lyra seized the opportunity, using her psychic resonance, an ability unique to her species, to identify the intruder among the nearby Xylarians. The saboteur was revealed to be a mid-ranking official who had long been critical of human involvement in the Empire. Their motives were complex: fear of change, desire for personal power, and distrust of outsiders. Yet Elias and Lyra remained calm, coordinating to neutralize the threat without causing panic. The confrontation was tense. Elias moved with precision, disarming the saboteur's devices, while Lyra guided security units to apprehend the intruder. The entire sequence demonstrated the effectiveness of their teamwork, human adaptability and courage combined with Xylarian intelligence and perception. Once the threat was contained, Elias and Lyra retreated to a secure observation area, catching their breath. Elias finally allowed himself a moment to speak freely. "You knew this would happen," he said, his tone a mix of respect and awe. "Did you anticipate it?" Lyra's eyes met his. "I sensed that someone would oppose human presence. It is inevitable in any society when change arrives. But I did not know the exact method or timing. That is why your adaptability is so important. Humans are unpredictable in ways that are valuable." Elias nodded slowly. "We make mistakes, we improvise, we adapt. That is our strength." She smiled faintly. "And it is why I watch. Humans are not only brave, They are capable of extraordinary decisions under pressure. Your species does not rely solely on strength or logic. You act with intuition, courage, and empathy. That is rare, and it is remarkable. As they watched the stars shimmer beyond the station, Elias felt a new respect for the princess. She was not merely a royal observer, she was a strategist, a scholar, and a companion in ways he had not anticipated. And despite the tension and danger, a bond was forming between them, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. The next few days involved careful monitoring and strategic diplomacy. Elias and Lyra continued their work, balancing the formalities of the delegation with covert observation of potential threats. Every interaction became a lesson: how to read subtle signals, how to anticipate hidden motives, and how to use both human ingenuity and Xylarian insight to navigate challenges. Through it all, Elias grew more aware of Lyra's abilities. She did not simply react to events. She remembered, analyzed, and predicted with a precision that was almost frightening. Yet she was patient, never forcing her knowledge but guiding, teaching, and observing. Elias realized that he was learning as much from her as she was from him. One evening, as they walked along a balcony overlooking the nebula, Elias spoke quietly. "Princess, I still do not fully understand how you knew my name. How did you recognize me before we met?" Lyra paused, her gaze fixed on the swirling gases below. "Commander, some impressions cannot be hidden. Actions, choices, courage, they leave echoes. When I first observed you, I felt these echoes. Your presence carries certainty, resolve, and a spark of courage. That is how I knew your name. You left an impression strong enough for me to recognize." Elias considered her words. To be recognized for who he truly was, rather than his rank or achievements, was both humbling and inspiring. Humans had long relied on courage, adaptability, and determination to survive the galaxy, and now he understood that these qualities resonated even across alien minds. As the night deepened, Elias felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The threat had been neutralized, but the challenges of diplomacy and interstellar relations remained. Yet for the first time, he felt confident. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and with allies like Lyra, perhaps they could navigate even the most complex situations. Somewhere across the station, Princess Lyra observed quietly, noting his reactions, decisions, and character. Elias did not yet understand the full extent of her abilities, nor did he realize how much their fates would intertwine in the days to come. But one thing was clear. The bond between human and Xylarian had grown stronger, forged through challenge, trust, and shared courage. The galaxy beyond remained vast, unpredictable, and full of unknown threats. Yet for the first time, Elias felt that humanity's place among the stars was not merely as explorers or diplomats, but as a species capable of rising to any challenge through intelligence, courage, and heart. And as the nebula shimmered around the orbital station, Elias Kane knew that the whisper of his name had set events into motion that would test the limits of both human and Xylarian ingenuity. The story was far from over, and the future held dangers, discoveries, and decisions that would define the course of interstellar relations for generations. But for now, he stood beside the princess, ready to face whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that humanity's greatest strength was not technology alone, but the courage, adaptability, and determination of its people. The days following the thwarted sabotage were tense, yet filled with cautious optimism. Commander Elias Kane found himself walking the corridors of the Arcturus orbital station with a sense of purpose that was sharper than ever. The events of the past week had proven that humans could rise to the challenges of interstellar diplomacy, not through sheer force, but through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. It was a lesson the Xylarians, particularly Princess Lyra, had observed closely. Despite the calm that had returned, Elias knew that vigilance remained crucial. The rogue faction within the Xylarian Empire was not entirely exposed. Some members could still act from the shadows. He had spent hours analyzing patterns, consulting with Lyra, and cross-checking security protocols. Each new discovery brought small victories, yet the possibility of unforeseen danger lingered in the back of his mind. Princess Lyra approached him one morning, her expression serene, but her eyes alive with that same quiet intelligence he had come to respect. "Commander, I believe it is time to address the lingering questions," she said softly. "The time has come for clarity." Elias looked at her, sensing the gravity in her tone. "You mean about the whisper and how you knew my name?" She inclined her head. "Precisely. You have wondered, and it is only fair that you understand." They moved to a small observation chamber overlooking the swirling storms of Arcturus Prime. The planet's glowing bands reflected in Lyria's eyes, giving her an ethereal quality that seemed almost otherworldly. "When I first saw you," she began, her voice calm and measured, "I did not simply hear your name. I felt it. Xylarians possess what we call psychic resonance, a subtle ability to sense emotional imprints left by individuals. These imprints are strongest when someone acts with courage, conviction, or a sense of duty. Your actions, Commander, left a resonance that I recognized immediately." Elias listened intently, the last pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "So it wasn't magic or technology. It was your ability to perceive character." Lyriath nodded. "Yes, it is not unique to me alone, but it is rare among my people. I recognized your name because your presence, your choices, your courage, your adaptability left an impression that could not be ignored. That is why I whispered it, not as a trick, but as recognition." Elias exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and awe washing over him. "I see. Then, all along you have been observing not just humans, but me in particular." "Indeed," she said, her expression softening slightly. "Observation is not mere curiosity. It is understanding. And understanding is the first step toward trust." Elias nodded, absorbing the meaning. Humanity had always survived against the odds by understanding, adapting, and persevering. Now he saw that these same qualities had impressed even the most advanced alien intelligence. He felt a renewed sense of pride, not arrogance, but the quiet satisfaction of being seen for who he truly was. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. The station's security systems detected movement near one of the secondary storage facilities, an area containing sensitive technology that the rogue faction had previously targeted. Elias and Lyriath exchanged a brief glance, understanding instantly that the final phase of the threat was unfolding. They moved quickly but cautiously. Elias led the way through the labyrinthine corridors, relying on both instinct and careful observation. Lyriath remained close, her awareness heightened, guiding them through the station's hidden sensors and anticipating possible obstacles. As they approached the facility, Elias could see the signs of tampering. Locks had been bypassed, panels removed, and energy fluctuations indicated that someone was attempting to access the vault's contents. A group of rogue Xylarians, led by the same mid-ranking official they had confronted previously, were at work. Their intent was clear: seize advanced technology and destabilize the station, leaving humans vulnerable and the delegation's mission in jeopardy. Elias assessed the situation quickly. The rogues were skilled, but not infallible. Using subtle distractions and calculated maneuvers, he began to neutralize the threat. Lyriath acted in tandem, guiding security forces to intercept the intruders while subtly influencing the outcome through her psychic resonance. The confrontation was tense. Elias moved with precision, disarming devices and coordinating with security units, while Lyra provided guidance and insight that turned the tide in their favor. Each move required trust, both in one another and in the abilities each brought to the table. Humans relied on adaptability and courage, Xylarians on perception and strategy. Together, they formed an unexpectedly formidable team. As the final rogue surrendered, Elias allowed himself a brief moment to exhale. The threat had been neutralized, the technology was safe, and the rogue faction's influence had been exposed. He turned to Lyra, feeling a surge of gratitude. "You were remarkable," he said quietly. "I could not have anticipated every move, but together we succeeded." Lyra's eyes held a faint smile. "And you, Commander, were steady, courageous, and observant. That is why I trusted you. That is why humanity's strength is so remarkable. It is not only in your technology, but in your mind and heart. The resolution brought more than safety. It brought understanding. Diplomats and officials on both sides had witnessed the cooperation, the courage, and the intelligence displayed by humans and Xylarians alike. Confidence in the human delegation grew, and relationships that had been tenuous began to solidify. Humanity's reputation, always defined by resilience and adaptability, was now strengthened in the eyes of a powerful alien civilization. Later, as the station quieted and the nebula beyond shimmered like scattered jewels, Lyra and Elias spoke again, more openly than ever before. "Princess," Elias began, "after all that has happened, what now? Where do we go from here?" Lyra regarded him, thoughtful. "Now, Commander, humanity has proven itself as an equal, not only in courage and adaptability but in judgment and action. Our alliance is stronger because of your presence, but there is still much to learn, much to explore, and many challenges ahead." Elias nodded, understanding the truth in her words. Humanity had not only survived the tests of the station, but had gained respect and trust through action, not just words. He realized that their partnership with the Xylarians was not merely political. It was a bridge between two species, built on understanding, trust, and mutual recognition. "Lyra," he said softly, "thank you. Not just for your guidance, but for seeing me, for seeing humanity as it truly is." Her gaze softened, and for a moment the formalities of diplomacy seemed to fade. "You have earned it, Commander. And in doing so, you have shown that humans are worthy partners in the galaxy. Courage, adaptability, and understanding. These qualities cannot be taught, but they can be recognized. That is why I knew your name." Elias felt a profound sense of closure and clarity. The mystery that had begun with a whispered name had led to understanding, alliance, and mutual respect. Humanity's place in the galaxy, while still challenging and fraught with uncertainty, was now recognized not by technology alone, but by the qualities that defined them at their core. As the orbital station settled into calm, Elias reflected on the events of the past days. Humans had faced an invisible threat, navigated complex political dynamics, and demonstrated the courage and intelligence that had always been the backbone of their species. And in doing so, they had not only secured their mission, but also forged a bond with an alien civilization that could shape the future of interstellar relations. Lyra watched him with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the echoes she had sensed were not merely a result of fleeting actions, but of consistent character. Elias had proven that humans were not only survivors, but capable of extraordinary achievements when intelligence, courage, and adaptability were combined. The story, she knew, was far from over. The galaxy remained vast, full of unknowns and challenges that would test humanity and Xylarians alike. But for the first time, she felt certain that the foundation they had built together, trust, understanding, and mutual respect would allow them to face whatever came next. Elias looked out at the nebula, the colors of the swirling clouds reflecting in his eyes. He thought of the whisper of his name, the challenges they had overcome, and the future that stretched across the stars. Humanity had been tested, and in doing so, had proven itself not only capable, but remarkable. "Commander," Lyra said softly, breaking the silence, "there is much ahead, but for now, rest. Learn from what has passed, and know that your actions have made a difference." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words and the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment. The galaxy was still vast, unpredictable, and full of mysteries, but he was ready. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived, leaving its mark on distant civilizations and proving that courage, adaptability, and heart were as valuable as the most advanced technology. As night fell on Arcturus Prime, the stars beyond shimmered like scattered gems. Elias Kane and Princess Lyra stood side by side, looking out at the vast expanse, knowing that this moment was both an ending and a beginning. Humanity had been recognized, its strengths acknowledged, and a bridge had been built between species. The future was uncertain, but it was full of promise, guided by courage, understanding, and the quiet power of recognition. And somewhere, in the quiet corridors of the station, the memory of a whispered name lingered, a reminder that sometimes even the smallest acknowledgement could spark events that changed the course of history. Elias Kane had faced the challenge, proven his worth, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy that humanity's strength lay not only in its ingenuity but in its courage, heart, and adaptability. The orbital station floated silently in the nebula, a symbol of diplomacy, trust, and the promise of new beginnings. Humanity had arrived among the stars not by force alone, but by proving that even in the vastness of space, courage, understanding, and determination could leave an echo powerful enough to be felt across worlds. Elias felt a quiet smile form on his lips. The adventure was far from over, the galaxy was still full of mysteries, but for now, humanity had made its mark. And as long as humans faced the stars with courage and heart, they would continue to thrive, leaving echoes that would be remembered across time and space.